UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this Monday night, the 30th of March, 2026. That means we're left with one day to wrap up the month of March. First of all, this is our first broadcast today, having missed the morning broadcast due to internet challenges. For those of you that are regulars on the channel, you will know that over the last 1 week and running into the weekend, we've had those challenges. I've mentioned them, but today I do not know for how long. I'm hoping I do not have to go through the agony of not having internet again, at least not at least as a result of a technical fault or anything in that regard. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be back with you guys today, and I'm hoping that you will join me for a fruitful discussion this evening. Meanwhile, I had plenty prepared for you guys to discuss in the morning broadcast, hoping against hope that those guys would come through quite very early on in the morning and I would get through with whatever needed to be done, but they could not conclude until the very, very late on afternoon, possibly even evening, depending on what the clocks were reading at the time. But it is what it is. But nonetheless, we did manage to publish a video that came your way regards to Manchester United's Michael Carrick, who is now in pole position to take on the reins as a permanent head coach at Manchester United, at least according to latest reports. So we did, talk a bit about that and why that could be the case, even though the club maintain that decision will be arrived at or formalized during the course of the summer. So nonetheless, I thought it was worth giving a special episode, and therefore that video did go live today. I think it was about 5 p.m. when it went live. So even tomorrow, we'll have another episode coming through. Tomorrow, it will be a different topic, so just turn your notifications on so that you can be notified whenever and wherever we do publish a new video. Otherwise, I want to say thank you so much to all those that have recently subscribed to the channel. I say thank you so much for joining the Football Tribe UG community. I hope you get to enjoy your stay or time with us. For those of you that are just joining us right now as we speak, thank you so much for chipping in. I hope you've had a wonderful Monday. Hello, my brother. This is Wise Guy 2K. Hi, Wise Guy. Where are you joining us from on this beautiful evening? Me, I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's 24 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. Adola says success is like a pregnant. Everyone says congratulations, but nobody knows how many times we are. That what? Galatasaray or Fenerbahce. That is Omar. I think Omar is joining us from Turkey or Turkey. We used to call it Turkey. Now it's called Turkey. Galatasaray or Fenerbahce, I wouldn't choose any. I'm not particularly in support of any particular of them. I just love football in general. So I'll enjoy Leroy Sané playing for Fenerbahce. For Galatasaray. The same way I'll enjoy Fred playing for Fenerbahce, or Edson Morales Santana. I'll enjoy Gabriel Sala in a Galatasaray shirt, as I will do Victor Osimhen and the Noah Lang, etc. Lucas Torreira. I'll enjoy them playing. The same way, I did enjoy watching John Duran while his loan stint lasted at Fenerbahce before it was cut short and he went on to Zenit St. Petersburg. So yeah, I'll enjoy all that. Meanwhile, tonight we'll be talking about the talks in which Tottenham are advancing with former Brighton and ex-Olympic Marseille manager Roberto de Zerbi, who they want to appoint as their manager / head coach, and on a 5-year contract. At least we are learning. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about Enzo Fernandez, who dreams of living in Real Madrid, and more of that. Cole Palmer's move to Manchester United. We are hearing that conversation is back in the press. And we'll be waiting to hear to tell you more about what that pertains to. Then also, apologies. Oh, Jesus Christ. I forgot to have our audios tested, but I hope I'm loud and clear. Anyways, nonetheless. But so we'll be talking about that. We'll talk about the CAF General Secretary, that is Mr. Veron, who did resign during the course of the weekend. So we'll talk about all those things in as far as this broadcast goes. Hi, Milton. How are you doing, my brother? I hope you're doing okay. I hope you've had a wonderful day. That is for your Monday. So the question is, where do we start it all? There's plenty of many places we can start from. Guys, you're 18 on the broadcast. How come we only have 5 likes? Guys, do me that absolute honor and favor and like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. Milton says, hello from London. Hello, Milton. How is London? I understand now the clocks have reset themselves. Previously, London has been, we've been 3 hours ahead of London. Now we are only 2 hours ahead of London. That means as we speak, it should be around 9:28 p.m. Over there in London, and not 8:28. Andrew Aston says, hello, bro. Hope you've had a wonderful day and for the rest of your life. By the way, from IK? From IK? What do you mean by IK? Looks like my acronym, memory there is short. Oh, you meant UK. Oh, from the UK. All right. Thank you so much. Joining us from the UK. What team do you support in the UK or in the English Premier League or anywhere around the globe? It could be from Scotland. It could be from Ireland. It could be from anywhere. So, Milton does acknowledge the time there. Anyways, like I said, there's one place for us to start, and that is to do with Tottenham Hotspurs. We know that yesterday they did sack the manager, Igor Tudor, who had been appointed as their interim manager until the end of the season. Unfortunately, they could not be patient enough with him until the end of the season, as they decided to part ways on a mutual agreement, and he was sent packing along with 2 members of his coaching staff, one being a goalkeeping coach, and I think the other being a physio. Now, with that, when that decision was taken, their former striker, Benjamin Colin Defoe, has been appointed as the working manager until they do announce whoever will be taking charge of the team going forward. Now, this came through according to the BBC. Now, we know that the number one priority candidate is Roberto de Zerbi, has been for quite some time, even though they have other names. Ex-manager Mauricio Pochettino, they've mentioned names like Marco Silva, they've mentioned names like Adi Hutter, not Hunter, Adi Hutter. Yes, formerly, I think at Borussia Mönchengladbach, so they mentioned all those names. However, it is very clear, or has becoming increasingly clear in the last, sort of 24 hours or thereabout, that Roberto de Zerbi is the guy that they would want in charge. Now, initial reports did suggest that the Italian international or the Italian manager wanted to wait until the end of the until the end of the season for him to decide his future and also explore the managerial market, because it's not like it's only Tottenham that are going to be looking for a manager. We know the situation that it is going to be at Crystal Palace. Oliver Glasner is leaving. At FC Bournemouth, Andoni Iraola's contract is running out and he's yet to renew. Marco Silva could be on the verge of leaving Fulham because his contract comes up at the end, or runs up at the end of the season. Milton says, yeah, Tudor and 2 coaches sacked. That's okay. Thank you for that addition. And then we know for a fact that Manchester United are going to be are weighing their options. Yes, according to recent reports, as discussed in that video that we did publish earlier on today on the channel, that Michael Carrick is in pole position to take on the permanent role. However, final decision is yet to be taken. That means something could change between now and the end of the season, Milton says, sir, can you see my comments? Yeah, I'm seeing your comments. I read them. I read the 9:28, your confirmation about the sort of time range that I was talking about with the UK, and then the sacking of Igor Tudor alongside two his of managers. Be rest assured, sometimes I may take a bit of time before I read your comment. That's because I want to drive a point home, and then I get to the comment. But I never leave any comment unread unless it was skipped unintentionally. So yeah, so now with that said, so with about approximately 9 weeks left until the end of the season, anything could change. Fortunes for Michael Carrick could change, could take a turn for the bad side, and maybe Manchester United think to themselves, maybe he's perhaps not the right guy. We do not know. So if you're Roberto de Zerbi, you're better off, perhaps waiting a little bit to see what else comes up. Because let's be honest, out of all the teams that I've mentioned, if Manchester United came calling for Roberto de Zerbi, chances are he's going to choose Manchester United over Tottenham Hotspur. Not that even Tottenham Hotspur would blame him for choosing Manchester United over them. And then two, the other factor that you ought to consider is the kind of situation that Tottenham Hotspur are currently in, that they are fighting for their lives in as far as staying up in the Premier League is concerned. And guess who it is? It could be at the expense of. It could come at the expense of the likes of Nottingham Forest, who beat them last weekend. It could come at the expense of their London rivals in West Ham United, who are a point below them on the Premier League table. There, I'm going with the presumption that Burnley and Wolverhampton Wanderers won't be able to make it out of the relegation zone, and they will be chopped off. So, with that sort of said, Tottenham are in a bit of a difficult situation. And if you're Roberto de Zerbi, you're there thinking to yourself, if I make the jump, or if I take the leap of faith and go and take on this managerial role at Tottenham Hotspur, what are the odds that I steer them to safety? Because it's a bit of a volatile kind of situation. First of all, you do not have much time to get the team going in terms of playing your way, in terms of getting those players drilled into the nitty-gritties of your own tactics. Therefore, you must ride on a certain tide in a way and say, we are facing this kind of situation. We are going to play whichever way we play. In other words, you'll give them the basics of how you'd want them to apply themselves so that you can win games. The beauty maybe, not the beauty, maybe the slight difference is that Tottenham Hotspur only have Premier League games to play. That means, on average, they will be playing one game per week until the end of the season. Therefore, you have a couple of days in between the course of the week to drill them into certain, playing styles and patterns. But of course, you wouldn't want to overload them with lots of information, because sometimes managers, especially managers that are tactically sort of obsessed with the nitty-gritties of the game, there's such a thing as too much information on players sometimes. Milton says Tottenham in big trouble and Carrick must continue to end of the season. Now, when I mentioned about Michael Carrick, it wasn't to say that even if things took a turn for the worse, he would be sacked. No, in any case, he's already there as an interim until the end of the season. And based on what he has already done, I do not think if they do not win any single game out of their remaining 7 games, he would be sacked before the end of the season. I do not think that would be the case. But it would only dent his own chances of being handed the role at Old Trafford permanently. Now, drifting back to Tottenham Hotspur. So, with Tottenham Hotspur only having to play in the Premier League, whichever manager comes in, and this is why I was saying Tottenham Hotspur needed to make the decision as soon as yesterday. And the reason or the cause for the delay in the sacking of Igor Tudor had everything to do with the demise of his father, Mario Tito, because he himself learned of his demise in the aftermath of losing that game against Nottingham Forest by 3-0. So that's why he did not do his media duties. And therefore, what then happened was sort of Tottenham deferred the conversation of his sacking at the club. Raymond Kangumba says, hi, Tottenham Hotspurs. De Zerbi appointed as manager of Tottenham Hotspurs and money to buy players for Spurs in the summer transfer window. That's from Raymond Kangumba. So, okay, I'll explain Raymond's comment in a bit. But so because he had lost his father, may his soul rest in peace, they deferred the conversation until when it was had probably on Saturday or Sunday, and then the statement came out that the two parties had mutually agreed to go separate ways. Of course, it's into Tottenham's time in a way, in a little bit. Nonetheless, the blessing in disguise, or the blessing that Tottenham have, is that even in the aftermath of the international break, the first weekend, which is I think April the 4th and 5th, they do not have a game to play because that weekend is going to be set aside for the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, implying that if a new manager were to be appointed before the end of this week, they do not have rush decisions to make when it comes to next weekend that they have a game to play. They will still have another stretch of a week to sort of prepare the boys on the basics. Now, earlier on, also, we had learned of reports that Tottenham Hotspurs were interested in taking on Sean Dyche until the end of the season, knowing that Roberto de Zerbi was yet to soften his stance on coming now as opposed to the end in the summer. So, because of the difficult situation Tottenham Hotspurs are in, if you're Roberto de Zerbi, your school of thought must be, these guys are in a bit of a difficult situation. I could walk in there, I could save the day, I may not save the day. You're taking a bet on yourself. It's a 50-50. And it's a 50-50 for you in terms of thinking about it. But when you step into the waters and understand the kind of situation that Tottenham are dealing with internally when it comes to all these injuries and the players sort of growing accustomed to losing, because we're talking about a team that lost 22 Premier League games last season alone. And this season, I think they've lost as many as 16 games thus far? At least I would want to think that they've lost that many games so far this season. And therefore, it does not give you a lot of encouragement. Sorry, they've lost 15 games thus far this season. Now, in other words, when you look at all the points that they've dropped in that period, the number of games they've lost, that's what drives us to the conclusion that they are now accustomed to losing. Because 22 from last season, add that to the 15 of this season. How many games are those? That's approximately 37 games that they've lost. That's worth literally an entire season. You know, that's 37 games is literally worth one game less an entire season over the course of the last two seasons. So it's that bad a situation that whoever is walking through those doors must be thinking, what am I going to do differently in the interim that all the others have not been able to do? Now, Ange Postecoglou had to deal with Spurs in his own circumstances last season, and Igor Tudor had to deal with it in his own circumstances. Of course, he was unsuccessful. He did not win them any single game in the Premier League. In fact, he could only gather 1 point for them. He lost all the other 5 games that he managed them. Was it 5 games? I think the other 4 games that he managed them through the Premier League, and then lost another game in the UEFA Champions League and won one in the UEFA Champions League against Atletico de Madrid. So that's his report card. It was that poor, you know. So if you're Roberto de Zerbi, you're thinking about this, you've assessed this team because it's not the first time that they've made the phone call to you. But so it's a big risk for him. If he comes in now and Tottenham end up being relegated, he's going to be the guy that, quote unquote, got the team relegated. It won't be entirely his fault, and I wouldn't blame it on him, But what the record will show that he was the man in charge at the time of their relegation. On the other side, and this we are learning according to multiple reports, is that if he comes in and he saves them, then he could get a huge bonus, because what he would have saved Tottenham in terms of losing, in terms of revenue, will be in exponential figures. So therefore, and you see, when teams get relegated, even if they bounce back the subsequent season, the recovery, when it comes to the financial bit of it or the financial implications of it, is not as straightforward as, this season you're playing in the Premier League, maybe you get 150 to 200 million pounds out of it across the entire season, as opposed to maybe getting 50 million pounds out of the championship season, and then that when you come back the subsequent season, you jump back to the 150 or 200 million pounds. That's not the case. It takes time. First of all, when you drop to the championship, you're going to lose some season ticket holders. You're going to lose some of the tourism kind of supporters, because they're not eager to come and watch you play against Leyton Orient or against, I don't know, a Plymouth. Sorry, not Plymouth. Maybe a Rotham, maybe a Wrexham, whatever those other teams are, a Peterborough or an Oldham, those kinds of teams in the championship. They're not that eager, as opposed to you being in the Premier League, where they could say, yeah, I'll go and watch them against West Ham, maybe a Crystal Palace, maybe Aston Villa, maybe a Newcastle, maybe an Arsenal, things like that. So it's not the same thing. So that's the conundrum for Roberto de Zerbi. So Tottenham Hotspurs are trying to entice him with, do you say, incentives in terms of bonuses, should he be able to save them from relegation. But then also the other critical part is, what are their plans going into the summer? Are they going to cough the resources to buy the players that, if they stay up, what is the situation going to be? Is he going to have the leeway to assess his squad and say, maybe out of this 26-man squad that you have, I don't want 6 of these players, or even 8 or even 10. I want them out. I do not think they're good enough, So he needs to do all that assessment. Now, those guarantees are supposed to be given in these preliminary conversations, So, because what is being reported is that Tottenham are willing to hand him a 5-year contract. Okay. Ami Herrera says, Cacao. I don't know what language that is, so you'll indulge me if I do not read the comment, but I do acknowledge seeing the comment. Ami Herrera. Then somebody else called, it's Milton. Milton says, it's just a high-risk job now at Tottenham that few managers will want. Exactly. And we're talking about Tottenham's contingency plan, or was that what we are hearing is that they want to give they were proposing or suggesting to give the role to Sean Dyche until the end of the season. And according to the BBC Sport, that is Sammy McBell of BBC Sport, he was reporting that Sean Dyche wanted at least a 18 months contract. That means a 1.5 year contract. Now, I do not think Tottenham Hotspurs, both in their desperation or insane mind, would consider taking that risk. The flip side is, the only way they could consider taking him up on that offer is, 1, bring him in, give him the 18 months contract that he wants, and if he achieves relegation, if he achieves the objective of helping Tottenham Hotspur stay in the Premier League, you still sack him anyway. In other words, you part ways with him, pay him whatever is owed to him for the remainder of his contract, with even a bonus of maybe saving them from relegation, which is still would be pennies compared to what they stand to lose if they do get relegated. That's the only flip side in which way you can look at it. But like Milton rightly puts it in the right words that I wish to associate myself with, is that it's a very high risk job. Any manager that walks in there that has prospects of managing elsewhere or future in management, it's going to be a risk because it could end up being a dent on your CV. For Sean Dyche, who he's sort of been through the riffraffs of management at Burnley before they part ways with him, at Everton previously before Everton got back David Moyes, and that was before the end of last season. At Nottingham Forest this season, he literally does not have a lot to lose in a way, even though he would not want to put himself in that kind of position. So because he knows that the task at hand would be very difficult, that's why his demands are equally high for Sean Dyche. So anyways, according to Sami Mokbel, he says Roberto de Zerbi's talks over becoming new Tottenham manager on long-term deal at an advanced stage. The Italian is now open to joining immediately. Still need to find a final agreement, but discussions described as positive and progressing. So far, that's what we are getting from Sami Mokbel of the BBC Sport, one of the most well-trusted journalists when it comes to reporting on Premier League matters and things like that. So, that's why I thought I should read you that quote. So that's the situation at Tottenham Hotspurs. That's where they stand. They want Roberto de Zerbi. However, Tim Sherwood made an argument that I thought was very, very sort of catchy. Milton adds that it is true that the Tottenham job would be very difficult. But like I was saying, their former manager, Tim Sherwood, made an argument that I thought is worth reading into or sort of revisiting. Hi, Ali. Okay. Hi, Ali. Ali says, how are you doing, brother? Hope you and your family are doing good today. Thank you so much, Ali. Yes, I'm doing good. Hope you are too, wherever it is you're joining us from this evening. Pedri Return says, everyone knows that boy. Yeah, how is the wife and kids? Mr. Tribe, I see what you're trying to do, Pedri. I see what you're trying to do. So, guys, anyways, allow me to say this just in a second. If you wish to buy me a cup of tea as a thank you, as a token of thank you, please, you can look at that $sign next to the comment box, and you can click on it. It could be as little as 2,000 shillings. That's meanwhile what 0.5 pounds, or $0.7, whichever it is, or maybe 0.5 euros, whichever it is. So, but thank you. That was just a side note. I bought you 1 minute ago. It's not yet been indicated to me on my screen. But if it is indeed true that you did buy me a cup of coffee, I'll be grateful, but I'll have to check on that later. Anyways, quickly, like I was saying, Tim Sherwood was saying, if Tottenham Hotspurs have this sort of conviction that it's Roberto de Zerbi that they wanted right from the onset, why did they not appoint him? To 7 games ago, before they decided to go with Igor Tudor? Why did they not push for that? Because he had just part ways with Olympique Marseille, so he was available during that time. Why are they seemingly now desperate, making it a do or die to bring him now? Because he believes, as much as he respects and loves Roberto de Zerbi and the kind of football he plays, he thinks he may not be right for the current conditions within Tottenham Hotspurs to help them survive relegation. And like Milton rightly put it, it's a very difficult situation, which makes it a very difficult job, a high risk for any manager that works in there, So, Mr. Tribe, you're Tottenham? No, I'm not a Tottenham fan. We're just discussing this situation at Tottenham Hotspurs. As Pedri, you do very well know that we do not discriminate on this channel. Where the news leads us is where we go. Thank you so much. De Zerbi instead of Igor Tudor would have been better then. Yes, 7 games ago would have been better for him to steer them until the end of the season. But now, with 7 games left to play, the odds become not so good. For example, it's like if you, I don't know, let me try to find the right example on this one. It's like saying, it's like when you're planning to leave home and go somewhere, but then you know it is threatening to rain. If you leave before it starts raining, you're better off than waiting until it starts to rain and then choose to move out because time is catching up with you. So basically, that's what Tottenham Hotspurs have literally done. You know, they made the wrong decision with Igor Tudor, and we spoke about it right here on the channel. For those of you that have been regulars in recent times, you know, even the semi-regulars will be able to tell. Now they've burnt their fingers, and suddenly they're telling us we have a prime target or a prize target here that we would want to bring in and has always been our number 1 target. So really, so it went from, because the other one were 5 Premier League games that Igor Tudor managed them through, 5 plus the 7 remaining, that would have been 12 games. In other words, the odds of Roberto de Zerbi steering them to safety would have been higher with 12 games than they are with 7 games left to play. You know, personally, I do not rate de Zerbi. That's Pedri. Wow, what you ate? What you eat for dinner today? Oh, I had some rice and beans earlier on. So, and then a small slice of velvet cake. That's what I had for today. But thanks for asking. I also hold my mug here. Thank you. Then you about not rating de Zerbi, by the way. I remember the time when before Hans Flick was appointed a Barcelona manager. Do you remember that Roberto de Zerbi was one of those names that were in the conversation around the Barcelona job? Not that he was a leading contender, but he was one of the names being mentioned for potential candidates, you know? Then you say, okay, I do not rate Tottenham or de Zerbi, nice meal, I eat grass. When you say you eat grass, what is that supposed to mean? Are you trying to say you're a goat, you're a cow? When you say you eat grass, I can't afford food. Pedri, that would be a lie. Just the other day, was it the other day, or was it yesterday or the other day? You did join us, and you said you had been in a shopping mall making shopping. Now, if you can afford to go to the shopping mall to afford grass, that must be some unique grass. Anyways, jokes aside, but if that is your current circumstance or situation, I pray you do come, you bounce out of it. No situation is permanent, we often say, back here in the land. So yeah, that is the situation regarding Tottenham Hotspurs in regards to their managerial pursuits and interests. We can only wait to see. The clock is ticking for both their targets and those that may have interest in the Tottenham job. I spent all money on shopping. Shopping what? You could have been shopping food. Pasta, spaghetti, macaroni and cheese, mozzarella cheese. I think you even know how to make pizza. I have no money for food. Can you buy me a coffee, please? The account is empty. Only that you guys can't see it, but here on my screen it reads UGX 00, 0 shillings. Anyways, we'll leave that at that. So moving on, the other news is regarding Enzo Fernandez. Enzo Fernandez did have an interview while away for the international break, and he said that he was being asked about, you know, his future, recent discussions about Chelsea and things like that. And he said Madrid is a very beautiful city, and he sees, or he looks at it the way Buenos Aires is. That's in Argentina. that it's the kind of city that he would want to live in one day, which, by the way, as we already know, Real Madrid hold interest in the Argentine midfielder. And just a couple of days back, before they broke off for the international break, we were speaking and he talked about how they did not understand how Enzo Maresca left the club and sort of seemed to signal that a lot of things are not going the way they had hoped or he had hoped as a Chelsea player. You know, he took so much from me. Oh, Milton, okay, Milton, Mr. Tribe wants your money. He took so much from me. What did I take from you? I've not taken anything from Pedri. The Manchester United problem may also be huge because of the acts of Carrick. Okay, let's discuss Man United in a bit. But starting with Enzo Fernandez. So we know that Real Madrid holds some long-term interest in Enzo Fernandez. Whether they can currently afford him remains to be seen because he wouldn't come cheap. According to Egbali and his partner, Toddy Body, they are not willing to sell players below prices they bought them at. And particularly when you look at players like Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, Joao Pedro, the sort of players that you look at as crown jewels in that Chelsea project. So they wouldn't budge. So in that sense, you look at it and think to yourself, Real Madrid will need to part with at least 125 million euros if they want to sign him, or even much more. The question is not on whether Real Madrid have the money, because I do not think they are in short of the money. The question is whether the rules will allow them. Pedri here, who is more conversant with Tebas's rules on spending than I may be, so much so that he doesn't like the man, may catch Real Madrid offside. But also, their coffers are not that deep. Why? Because they just redeveloped their stadium and a lot of money went into that project. And I'd want to assume maybe if they did acquire any debt, if any, may still be paying off that. If you have been observant, Real Madrid have been very strategic in recent times in trying to recruit players, very, very good players who are out of contracts with their respective clubs. That's how they acquire Kylian Mbappe. That's how they acquire, literally, quote unquote, Alexander Trent-Arnold, even though they eventually had paid about 10 million euros for him because they wanted Liverpool to let him out of his contract early enough for him to feature for them at the FIFA Club World Cup over in the summer in the USA in 2025. So you've had that. And then of course, they did spend some money, 50 million pounds on Dean Howson, for which they're supposed to pay that in 3 installments to get him out of Bournemouth. They spent about 50 million euros to get Alvaro Carreras from Benfica, the left back. So that's how they've been operating in a way, sort of under the radar, kind ish. And then they have had interest in the likes of Ibrahim Konate, who we know his contract runs out at the end of the season with Liverpool. Last I checked, Liverpool and Ibrahim Konate camp had resumed contract talks, but we are yet to ascertain what the fruits of that are or the current status on those negotiations. So they are already scanning the market to get the best players either on a cheap or preferably on a free transfer because of La Liga's controlled spending with clubs and etc. And then in addition to which, I've just told you about the mega project of redeveloping the Bernabeu that they undertook. So there's a lot of that. So I think Real Madrid, being the club that they are, they can afford Enzo Fernandez. However, if you do afford Enzo Fernandez, are you in pole position to make all the other acquisitions that you're going to need? Because, first of all, going particularly into next season, I think Real Madrid are going to need a solid centre back. Two, then I think they would need a right winger, in my opinion. So that means they would need to move on some players. I don't know if they will be able to move on Rodrigo Goes because currently he's out through injury. He suffered that anterior cruciate ligament injury. Then you look at players like Falan Mendy could leave. Dani Carvajal could leave the club at the end of the season. Between Eder Militao, Antonio Rudiger, and David Alaba, one of those could leave. If not two of them, one of those could leave. So, there's that. So all that is going to be happening. Okay, let me take in some of your comments. Okay. Okay, Hamilton, I'll get back to the Man United comment. Pedro says, Mr. Tribe, do not take our money, please. Okay. Let me refrain myself from commenting on that. In this channel, if you do not pay, you can't watch. Obviously, that's a lie. Say hi. I think Enzo Fernandez may not be moving. Real Madrid are very careful. That's true. They are very careful. But the reason as to why he's saying all these things, I do not want to believe that it's because he's desperate for a move away from Chelsea. I do not think it's come to that point. In any case, last I checked, he had a 6-year contract with the club, if not longer. The likes of Cole Palmer have 9 years. The likes of Moises Caicedo are in the sort of that kind of realm. Richie James, the other day, just renewed his contract. Now, I think Enzo Fernandez has been saying the things he said recently because of frustration. When you remember, the 2 weeks or so prior to the international break had not gone Chelsea's way. You remember they went from the 2-1 defeat away at Arsenal in the Premier League, beat up against Aston Villa by 4-1, managed to scrap themselves out of beating Wrexham in the 50th round of the FA Cup 4-2 after extra time, then lost to PSG in the doubleheader, in between which they had lost to Newcastle, and then went on to lose against Everton quite terribly. So that sort of spell or run of spell of poor, very, very poor results have left some players within that dressing room, players that obviously care about the club, a bit frustrated. And that's why, and he's talking about, they don't know why Enzo Maresca was let go. Now, guys, know this for a fact. Every manager that walks through the doors of any club, especially midway the season, he's inevitably going to be compared to the previous manager by his own players. Why? Because you either significantly improve these players or it has to show in overall results that you're better than the previous one. Now, to be fair, when you look at his primary record, that is Liam Rossignol, who I do not think he's an upgrade to Enzo Maresca. In any case, Maresca himself is a better manager or head coach than Liam Rossignol. To be fair to Liam Rossignol, he's managed the club through 10 Premier League games. They've won 5. They've drawn 2. They've drawn 2 and they've lost 3, which is not bad, on paper, roughly, not bad. That means they've only lost 3 out of 10. So it looks okay. However, the manner in which some of those defeats have come, you remember the swap of goalkeepers, which did not work out. It got them penalized away at Parc des Princes. Then Robert Sanchez comes back in goal. He commits a halo against Everton. So they've sort of been shambolic, to say the least. Had Chelsea been winning, I do not think Enzo Fernandez would be saying these kinds of things about his manager. That's what I think about him. Okay. Milton says, I think Enzo Fernandez may not be moving. Okay. Oh, I read that. Sorry. Pedro says, Mr. Tribe, please do not take money. No. I think Mr. Tribe owns Adidas. Adidas. Not sure I even know where their headquarters are. By the way, speaking of Adidas, so we used, we had an Adidas shop in Uganda. I do not know if it's still there. It's on one of the main streets in the capital. And I remember one day I was passing by that shop, and the price tag on some of those sneakers and kits was higher than my salary at the time. And it was a rude awakening. So it just gave me you just gave me that memory. Mr. Tribe should become a football coach. He would coach little kids to play football. He would do a good job, and then he can do street football as a career. I think you should record your football skill. Thank you, Pedri, but I think I need to take coaching classes to get coaching badges for me to qualify to even tutor football at an academy level that is worth the salt. It's one of those remote ideas that is popped up in my mind before about doing coaching badges. However, I think it's a bit costly. Ali says the Chelsea manager giving on tactics while getting thumped off PSG with 7 minutes left was a red flag for me. Ali saying this business of Liam Marcinia scratching out cheats to give tactics to players when the game is already lost is meaningless or is a red flag for him. Authentic Adidas kits in Scotland are £125 for the top. Just for the top. Wow. Now, let me do for you a little bit of a quick math. In regards to just that price. This will tell you how bad things were. Pound to UGX. Currently, the rate of the pound to the Uganda shillings is 4,972 shillings, rounded off. So, if I'm to take what Ali is telling us from Scotland, here's the kind of math you're going to be looking at. 125 times 4,952 shillings. That amounts to 619,000 Uganda shillings. Now, at the time, when I saw that price tag, not too many years ago, but just a little over half a decade, I think, the price tag was around $100 or thereabouts, and I was not making $100 a month at the time. So, anyways, we'll leave that at that. Pedri says Adidas is from Germany. Remember, if the sneakers price is above your salary, work without looking at the clock, so you can buy without looking at the price tag. You will become a millionaire. Perhaps that's the mission. I'm happy to be tired. So, anyways, so yeah, that's just sort of the bit about it. Anyways, so when it comes to Enzo Fernandez, such players of his caliber have these ambitions. They have these objectives. They want to win at the highest level. They want to win silverware. They want to compete at the highest level. And when they see a project that they are part of, like the Chelsea project, taking what they believe feels to be a turbulent direction, they're going to raise their voices. They're going to raise their concerns. They're going to express some, or they're going to press to show some distress signals, So I'm not saying that he's going to leave Chelsea at the end of the season. That's not what I'm saying. But you cannot rule out anything, because we know for a fact that Real Madrid have acknowledged just as much that they did not do well in the replacement of Casemiro, Toni Kroos, and Luka Modric. with players like Eduardo Camavinga, Tchouaméni, we know Fede Valverde blows hot and cold sometimes, and things like that. So in considering Enzo Fernandez, it could be that they're thinking, yeah, we get to the summer, we get rid of one of Tchouaméni and Camavinga, and we bring in an Enzo, or something. Maybe we get rid of Ibrahim Diaz to create room. He could fetch us some money so that we keep Adagula and Franco Massatuano. The math is there. And we know for a fact that Florentino Perez is not afraid to part ways with players, even though they will be very, very brilliant players. He did it with Angelo Di Maria. He did it with Mesut Ozil. He did it with Gonzalo Higuain. He did it with Cristiano Ronaldo before, when he was still a top player. So yeah, kiss, Mary, kill. Georgina, Antonella, Messi, pick one of each. What do you mean? Oh, kiss, marry, kill. Georgina, Antonella. I wouldn't kill any. I don't think I would kiss any. Nor would I marry any. Who is Antonella? So, you have for the game. Okay, Georgina. I'll kiss Georgina. Is that Cristiano's wife? Georgina? How I've responded to you, Pedri. Yeah, I know it's a game. Oh, Antonella is Messi's wife. That guy is not discussing football, the Pedri guy. Okay. But I've given you my answer. Yes, I've given you my answer. Georgina. I'll kiss Georgina. Anyways, let's revert back to Milton's comment about Manchester United. He said the Manchester United problem may also be huge because of the apt of Kirk now. Okay. Pedro likes these light moments during our chat here on the channel. So, about Manchester United, I've said this about Manchester United, and allow me to repeat myself for your sake and for everybody else that is part of the broadcast. Manchester United will need to define the kind of direction they want to take. Do they want to build a project over a period of maybe 2 or 3 years, and then they go on to dominate English football and perhaps European football, or they want to fix their house as soon as possible and become competitive and see where it leads? And I've said this before, if that is the case, then keep Michael Carrick, throw the money at him. If you want to build a more longer-term project, then you may be looking at somebody with a little more experience than Michael Carrick and a manager that is a bit tactically astute in terms of these kinds of managers that are a bit obsessed with the tactics and things of that nature. So, and I've always drawn to these examples, or some of these examples. You look at Manchester City before they won their first Premier League title in 2012. They had spent the previous 3 years building that project. And then they won in 2012. Then they lost the title in 2013. They won it again in 2014. Then missed it in 2015, 2016, and 2017, and won it in 2018 and 19. That's under now Pep Guardiola. So it takes time to build these kinds of projects. For those of you that care to remember, when Mourinho wins with Chelsea in 2005 and 2006, Claudio Ranieri had built quite a good squad. Jose Mourinho just added on a few pieces and made it work. When you look at Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp, he comes in 2015, and they win their first major piece of silverware in 2019 when they win the UEFA Champions League. Okay, I mean one of the two big ones, the Champions League and the Premier League. And then the subsequent year, they win the Premier League title for their first time in 30 years. And prior to his exit, he had already started working on the transition. And he had a very competitive Liverpool side that had finished third in his final season with 82 points. That was about, I think, about 7 points behind Arsenal in second place and 9 points behind the eventual champions, Manchester City. That's the same team that Arne Slot came and won with, So last season. So the project was already built because after winning the league title in 2020, they did not win another until 2025. So you see, it takes a bit of time in between there. Of course, in between there, they were really, really competitive, including finishing second in 2022 with just a point behind Man City, including playing a UEFA Champions League final in the same year. Of course, during that sort of spell, they also won some, they won an FA Cup, they won 2 Carabao Cups, and things like that. So, yeah, so Manchester United will need to define their path to say, this is what we need to do or what we are going to do. And they need to stop playing to the they need to stop playing to the gallery, because every time things get hot in there and let's say fans begin raising their voices, they're quick to act. More like as if to say that they do not trust their own decisions that they have taken, Because look at the sacking of Enzo Maresca. It didn't happen too long after that interview from Sir Jim Ratcliffe that was telling us that Enzo Maresca needs at least 3 years. And he was drawing comparisons with Arsenal, with Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. And yet, when Ruben Amorim, of course, he had the falling out with Jason Wilcox. So they woke up and decided to show him the exit. Pedri says, and also me and Mr. Tribe go way back. We know each other well. Milton, do not mind so much Pedri. I know. That's why when he was making all those comments about the money, I was not responding to each and every comment. But it is what it is anyways. But I hope you do not feel offended in any way. It's a peaceful forum. Banter comes in sometimes. A bit of side talk also comes in. It is what it is. So yeah, all that is happening. Anyways, I'm moving away from Manchester United. Briefly, returning to the land here back in Africa. I don't know if you guys know, but over the weekend, CAF General Secretary Veron Mosengo Omba, the 66-year-old DRC Congo international, stepped down as General Secretary at the Confederation of African Football. And of course, he also is a Swiss national or holds Swiss nationality. We know for a fact that he was 3 years past the retirement age of CAF officials, which is 63, so he was 66. Then also, it's come at a time when African football is going through a bit of a turbulent time with the kind of decision that the CAF Appeals Committee decided to take in the wake of the appeal from Morocco versus Senegal in the final. So deciding to award the trophy to Morocco, and we know that Senegal has appealed that decision in CAS and things like that. So, but Mosengo Omba was also at one point accused of creating a toxic work environment, but investigations exonerated him of any wrongdoing whatsoever. And now we have learned that our competitions director, Samson Adam, will be taking on the reins as interim general secretary until further notice. But that's some of the things that are coming out. But also, it does step down at a time when what is that? At a time when when the women's tournament that was slated to be in Morocco was also done was also postponed. So yeah, all that is been happening in terms of African football. Pedri says, I'm a guy all about fun, enjoy life, man. Milito, go smile, man. Even when Barcelona lost to Bayern, I woke up happy the day after. You mean when they lost with those many goals a couple of years ago? Anyways, so all that has been making the rounds. Now, moving back to Chelsea, the rumors surrounding Cole Palmer and a potential move to Manchester United are also back. Yes, we know he's on a very long-term contract. This season hasn't been his very best. He's a childhood Manchester United fan who unfortunately came through the ranks of the Manchester City Academy. And we know that Chelsea and Chelsea and Man United have a fairly good relationship because you remember Mason Mount in 2023 coming from Chelsea to Manchester United. So there's that. Why did you say it as the many goals? Because those goals were quite many, to be honest. I mean, you know, when you're a team the size of Barcelona, in terms of global reach and reputation and brand, when such things happen to you, they're going to make news. The same way, the Brazil national team that I do support got obliterated by Germany at the semi-finals of the 2014 World Cup, losing by 7-1. So that's like a stain on a team. You remember back in 2010, 2011, that season, when Arsenal went on and lost 8-2 against Manchester United. It's a song that Manchester United never stopped singing towards the Arsenal fans, you know. So, remember last year, Rafinha, hat-trick, we won 4-1 last year too. Be that as of it may, it will not equate to the other one. I forget the season in which it was. You remember when Bayern Munich beat Arsenal home and away 5-1, 5-1 to knock them out 10-2 at the round of 16 on aggregate score. So unfortunately, all those things do happen. And there's not much we can do to change the history of the context of that. Do you remember the many goals last year from us against Madrid? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, do you also remember the many goals from Atletico de Madrid this year, from Sevilla? What team is Pedri supporting? Pedri is a staunch Barcelona fan, also Spanish national team fan. Of course, yeah, those are his teams, really. And those are his teams. So, yeah. Okay. Bayern. I know. I know. I know. But it was 2022. Remember that? Pedri 2022. You remember? 8-2. So, anyways, those are bad times that we always want to forget, or stains on our respective teams that would rather not remember. But yeah, I mean, the sort of kind of things that happened then are not the kind of things that any of us would want to dwell on. Usually, when you have a result that embarrassing, you want to quickly forget it as soon as possible. But yeah, it's one that is never going to just rub away easily. Okay, let me see if okay. So obvious, Milton, the best player ever. Pedri is my boy. Besides Messi, my number one, of course. Got yeah, but times 2022 Europa League. Where would Barcelona be without Xavi Hernandez? Anyways, it's all good. It's all good. So, guys, it's been one fruitful hour of this discussion. Why don't you allow me call it a night, and I retreat to my night duties. This is Joseph Jerry. Hi, Joseph Jerry. How are you doing? Where are you joining us from? But I feel like the quality in the Europa League has massively decreased since the new UEFA Champions League format, because no teams from UEFA Champions League go in it. It's becoming so boring. Only UEFA Champions League is fun now. Do you think the same? I think I do acknowledge that the quality has dropped, because during the previous years, or in the previous edition, you had teams that were finishing third in the group stages of the UEFA Champions League drop over to the UEFA Europa League, and that's how you had Chelsea win that title in 2013. That's how you had Sevilla win it constantly in 3 consecutive years. That's how you'd have teams like Manchester United. You remember 2011, 2012, they dropped from the UEFA Champions League to lose home and away against Bilbao. You remember all sort of those Shakhtar Donetsk kind of teams. Oftentimes they would drop off there. Olympiacos sometimes, So in a way, yeah, you feel that if it's going to be a game between Chelsea and Shakhtar Donetsk, or Chelsea versus Benfica, or versus FC Porto, or versus FC Basel, you sort of feel the gravitas of the game. But as we speak, it likely has, or it has predominantly had, mid-table teams, ordinary mid-table teams, even at the later stages. Of course, last season you had Manchester United there, one of the big teams, or very highly followed teams, but I sort of understand where you're coming from with that kind of comment. So, yeah, there's a bit of a drop-off. Joseph says, okay. Milton says, he's a Barcelona supporter. Hello, Joseph. You were watching Barcelona versus Napoli in 2022 Europa League. Do not get me wrong. I was angry, but as a neutral, now you're watching Nottingham Forest versus Shakhtar. It's such a downgrade. In a way. Sir, are you doing a live from Uganda? Yes. I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's a midnight. Yeah, midnight. So Pedri, yeah, I completely understand. You remember, I think 2015, the UEFA Europa League final was between Sevilla and Liverpool. I think you remember, in 2017, it was Manchester United versus Ajax. In 2021, it was Manchester United versus Villarreal. In 2019, it was Chelsea versus Arsenal, the Europa League final. In 2013, I think it was Chelsea versus Benfica. in let's see, because 2018 Atletico Madrid won it. I don't remember who they beat in the final, but I remember they knocked out Arsenal on their way to the final. In 2022, was it 2022? Let me see. Around there, 2023, they are bad. Sporting CP knocked out Arsenal. So, yeah, you have a downgrade there. You have a downgrade there, obviously, in a way. It is there. So, when you go through some of those finals, it sort of tells you last season, sorry, in 2023, you had, no, that was 2024. You had Atlanta versus Bayer Leverkusen. Then in one of those, you had AC Roma. In one of those, I'm struggling to remember who. In 2022, it was Eintracht Frankfurt against Rangers. I'm struggling to remember who the finalists were for the UEFA Europa League final last season. And you know why? But then I remember it was Chelsea versus Real Betis in the Conference League final. You know, Uganda is one of the best countries ever because there lives a man called Robert Kesakos, one of the kindest people out there. Thank you so much, Pedri, for the kind words. So, so really, it is true that there's been a drop off. Oh yeah, last year it was Tottenham versus Man United. Sorry, how could I forget? Maybe because the winner is not a routine winner, and then 2023 was Sevilla versus Roma. Yeah, Sevilla won it. So there's that bit of a sense. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Pedri, for that reminder for last year's Europa League final. The last good Europa League final was 2019. Yeah, Arsenal getting obliterated by Chelsea 4-1 in Baku, Azerbaijan. The last match was Tottenham final, and United lost. Yeah, it was a very boring final, by the way. Very, very boring of a final. So, and then you remember the 2012 final was very, very interesting, even though Atletico de Madrid ran away with it when they were beating Athletic Bilbao. They beat Diego Simeone had come in. They beat Bilbao that was under Marcel Bielsa. They had Fernando Llorente. They had Ika Munayin, Ibai Gomez, Andon Iraola, Xavier Hernandez, who was playing in center back. They had Ander Herrera in that team. Those are the kinds of players that Marcel Bielsa was managing at the time. So on the other side, you had the likes of Radamel Falcao. For the side of Atletico Madrid, I think you had Ada Turan in that team. etc. What time will you come tomorrow morning? Let's discuss European World Cup qualifiers. Tomorrow morning at around 9 a.m., 9:30, thereabout, is the time I hope to be coming to you live, provided I will have internet. So, tomorrow are the finals. I know Italy are up against Bosnia Herzegovina, then Kosovo. Kosovo are up against Turkey. Czech Republic will be up against Denmark. Sweden take on Poland. So yeah, those games will come at I think 9:45 p.m. That's when we do have those games being played. So yeah, we'll be discussing a few of them or some of them. Imagine if Italy bottle it again for a third time. I do not think it would be news. I think it would simply become a routine because they bottled it in 2018 against Sweden. in 2022 against North Macedonia. So it would simply boil down to becoming a routine. But thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, Joseph Jerry. Thank you so much, Milton. Ali, thank you so much. Who else? Raymond Kangumba, always a pleasure. And Andrew Aston, thank you so much. Dollar 077, Wise Guy, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you guys around and keeping me company and keeping this channel going and, blessing me with your time and submissions. It's always much appreciated. For those of you that, that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do appreciate you a great deal. We do not take your love and support for granted. So thank you so much. Keep doing that. Those of you that are just new, please go over to the channel under the video section. There's plenty of content to watch through. We did publish our best 11 of the Premier League this season. It's there on the channel. You can go and check it out. We have a video on Michael Carrick being in pole position to take over the job at Man United. We have potential replacements for Mohamed Salah. Pedri told me I should not talk about Lamine Yamal anywhere in that conversation. So please go ahead and watch all that content. Even under the short section, you can also have a review of some of these live broadcasts and, see how it went. Pedri can have a good rest. That is from Milton. How is the watch time? How is the watch time been? Milton can have a good rest too. Okay, the watch time, it's not been bad. It's been on an upward trajectory. That's why we now have membership. Like I told you the other time, you can be that supportive member. Like I told you, I put the membership fee at a bare $2.5, which is roughly 10,000 shillings, Uganda shillings. And yeah, so because we managed to achieve some good watch hours, we are not yet where we want to be, but because we managed to hit a few, they allowed us to put on now the membership. And that's why you also have that, chat support kind of a sticker where you can appreciate me and buy me a coffee, buy me a bottle of water, anything. So it's because we made some steps in the right direction. We must hit 10K by 2027. Oh, 10K subscribers? Wow. Let's first improve on the watch time. I think the subscribers will continue to come with time. Pedri, Viva Barcelona. You guys are beginning now a Barcelona bromance in the comment section. So have a good night. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. If you can join us in the morning conversation, and we see what we'll be able to digest in the morning hours. It's actually Visca Barcelona, Visca Catalunya. I think he wrote it in English. You wrote it in the Spanish way. Viva España. Okay. Have a blessed night, guys. Until next time. Bye-bye for now.